Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Danny tries a ting and I am Danielle, Danny. I have been sick as of late, so I really apologize for the delay in bringing you guys this video. So today we are going to do part 2 of my journey into home ownership. Okay, if you haven't seen part 1, please click somewhere over here, or there will at least be the link inside the description. But yeah, let's get to it. My partner and I were really wanting to stay downtown, but we knew that we didn't have downtown money. So we were willing to sort of broaden our search a little bit. And we figured Scarborough, for example, was like a nice city that was close-ish and was familiar to both of us, since he grew up there and I partially grew up there as well. You know, it felt like medium ground. And so in terms of settling on a place, you know, I feel like we had our list of criteria, but I will say that my partner is more of a turnkey ready type of guy. You know, everything just needs to be the way it's supposed to be. It needs to look clean. It needs to look beautiful. Whereas I am more of a DIY. I can see the potential. I could see the skeletons. Within the skeletons, there is so much that we could work with. I'm more of that type of person. So we were a little bit at odds in that sense, because I guess I'm a dreamer. So I think we probably searched for about 2 months, actively looking at places with the help with our realtors, also making use of that app's House Sigma. And we found this townhouse and it had a yellow door. So the yellow door was the first sign. The moment we saw the yellow door, we're like, oh! Because yellow is my daughter's favorite color and it's also one of my favorite colors. So the moment we saw the door, we were like, okay, stop it. Open the door and enter the space. And keep in mind, this is a townhouse, okay? And so townhomes are usually quite narrow and vertical, whereas upon entering the living room in this space, it was actually wide because it goes over the entrance of the parking. It's actually the one unit that's a little bit different than all the other units that were built in proximity. So the layout was really cool, but then also the previous owners, they were sort of like our vibe as well in terms of their aesthetics. And, you know, I think they were like a youngish couple as well. Maybe, I think the husband was maybe like a landscape designer or something, and they also had kids, so it was quite easy for us to now envision ourselves in this space. You know, we could see where the kids' play area could be. We could see where our art would be. Like, they had such a similar aesthetic that upon going in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is it. I am so sold. I believe this is it. I was like very excited. My partner was feeling that same energy as well. We were just really excited again. And then it was also like all this like natural light that was coming in, so we could already envision where the plants were going to go. Anyways, so we knew that this was going to be the home for us. And so the next part was putting in an offer. A note on finding the right neighborhood. Once we found this townhome, you know, we did our research. It was close proximity to grocery stores and libraries, a lot of parks as well. So we felt really good and confident about that decision. And also even just the neighborhood that, like, within the street, the community that exists within the street. Like, I love my neighbors. I think they're so awesome and great. And I can't wait for us to develop even stronger relationships. The one thing that I will say is that I guess because the kids were not yet in starting school, that we didn't really fully understand or think about the effects of choosing the right school, because in part it was because I knew I was going to enroll the kids in French school. There are not that many French schools necessarily in Toronto. There's a handful, but they're not that many. And I knew that they had access to a bus system. So I guess in my mind I was like, okay, it's not the end of the world, I'll take the bus. What? You know, my daughter now has to take like a 30-minute bus ride, and I think it's really long. And I in hindsight, I wish I had a better understanding of like just like how the school zones were sort of broken down. So then maybe we could have also been more intentional in that regard. Okay. We had no experience putting in any offers because we hadn't put in any at this point. But this, we knew we had to put in an offer. At the time, our realtor was basically saying to put in an offer that you feel completely comfortable with, but that you know that if you don't get it, you won't feel like, oh darn, I should have put in more of an offer, or I should have put in my maximum, or what have you. Like, shoot your shot. And you know, at the time it was like, okay, you know what, so-and-so's birthday is this, so let's put, you know, something ending with 030 because that's my birthday. And you know, it was like very, very specific, the number that we ended up putting in. Oh, the thing that was a little bit difficult for us was also because we were going to include conditions. And so the conditions we were going to include was a condition of financing, so to ensure that everything was all right in terms of the bank loaning us money, a condition of a home inspection. We want to have it inspected by someone to ensure that there were no issues with the home. And you have to keep in mind, at that time, in that environment, because again, Toronto, there's such a scarcity in terms of real estate, in terms of people trying to buy, that people were omitting any conditions. So in fact, it turned into a bidding war with two other bidders, and the two other bidders did not have any conditions at all. However, we had the better offer. Woo! So actually that fared really well in our case, because they were willing to take our conditions into consideration to an extent, but they were trying to see if there was a room to negotiate. I should also clarify as well, these owners were operating without realtors. So there's a company called Purple Bricks, where essentially I think they help you like take the pictures of the house or what have you and put up the listing, but you get to circumvent the whole realtor fees and what have you. So they were doing this independently. We got our home inspection in. I think we maybe did away with our financing condition, but you know, our financing was fine, so it was fine. But essentially, you know, the home inspection came back, everything like the things that they did flag, I think, are regular maintenance. Actually, am I wrong? I feel like there was actually maybe one thing that was flagged, and so as a result, it knocked off. We were able to subsequently knock off a little bit of the money that the offer that we had set. I think maybe it was like a $5,000 difference or something. Not super significant when you consider how much we dropped on that bad boy. But overall, our offer was accepted.
Wow.
Our offer was accepted and we were now homeowners. What? We were ecstatic. We were so ecstatic. We put in the closing as 3 months down the line, just to allow us enough time to like take our time to say goodbye to the previous home that had served us so well. The rent for that one was so low. So it had really served us so well, and it was downtown, and it was, you know, it was our home for a long time. So we took our time saying goodbye and packing up. And then finally, I think it was February that we moved in. In the previous video, I had mentioned I'd use a chunk of my money for the down payment, but in terms of the closing costs.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly clarify. In part one, I talked about the different sources for the down payment, how I came up with that. Just wanted to specify with regards to the closing costs. With regards to the closing costs, again, we were debt free, and so my partner was able to use the savings towards closing costs. So all the amounts listed in this video, he was responsible for that. Okay, so again, that's back when we were debt free. We ain't debt free no more. Okay, shoot.
Okay, so closing costs, I think they tell you to anticipate paying roughly 4 to 5% in closing costs. Because, for example, I think the realtor's fees come out of the seller's a portion. However, you still have to pay your land transfer tax, which is like 20K. Like it's hefty. So your land transfer tax, we had to pay our lawyers. There was a lot of paperwork that needed to be done, so we had to pay our lawyers as well. Also, our moving costs as well, like packing everything up and hiring movers. That costs money.
For post-production, I think it was under 25K, give or take, in total closing costs. I feel like 25-ish is like a good estimate.
And that doesn't even include purchasing like furniture. Now you have this beautiful, cute home, and in our case, we had upgraded in terms of size. And so now the furniture that we had that was before previously to fit into a smaller space didn't work so well. And at the time, as I was like, I don't want to bring any of that stuff over. I really want to be intentional about the furniture that we bring in. I'm glad that we have been moving at a slower pace and, really thinking through our decisions and how, the artwork that we put up and et cetera, et cetera. So it's been like a slower journey than I would have anticipated, because decorating is part of the fun, really decorating and really turning it and transforming it into your own is the exciting part of having a home. But I sort of had to like slow my roll because otherwise it can get really, really expensive. And I really didn't want to just accumulate a bunch of stuff. I really wanted to be intentional about the things that we have and the purpose that it serves. And I think there's certain pieces that really make sense to splurge on. And then others, like maybe it makes sense to go look at Facebook Marketplace or, thrift shops or auction houses or whatever. There's so much stuff that people are getting rid of that you can get at a great cost. And if you have like a DIY spirit, that you could really infuse new life to. So I think there's different ways of like figuring out how to beautify your home. So slowly but surely. Okay, so a major thing about financing was, so we have access to this mortgage because we put 20% down. We can have an amortization period of 30 years. Okay, so that means you have 30 years to pay off this big loan that you're going to get from the bank. And as we were shopping around, I just need you to understand, at the time, the decision was between variable rate versus a fixed rate. Okay, so like I said, you have 30, let's say you have 30, in our case, we have 30 years to pay off your mortgage. Within those 30 years in Canada, it's broken down into terms. So usually a term is like 3 to 5 years, in our case, 5 years. So you have 5 years that these certain conditions are agreed upon. And then after those 5 years, you can change it and you can apply for something different. So we had the choice between variable versus fixed. And so a fixed rate mortgage means, let's say, for example, at the time, I think the offer was 2.64%. The fixed rate was 2.64% that we were offered, which would have meant that for those 5 years, our rate would be 2.64. It wouldn't budge at all. We're paying a fixed amount towards our mortgage. Now, again, at that time, this was like pandemic time, there were notoriously low variable rates. So our variable rate that we got offered was 1.3%. And we had done a lot of research. So we didn't take this decision lightly at all. And again, my sister works for a mortgage company, also put us in touch with other brokers. So we got a lot of insight, and then we were also doing our own independent research. We ended up selecting variable rate because, again, at the time it was 1.3, which was so low. But then also, historically at that point, anytime the Bank of Canada made changes to their prime rate, which is what then impacts your variable rate, in the past it was usually 0.25, or on the higher end it was 0.50, for example, each rate hike. So we did the calculation. It would take, I think it was like 7 or 8 rate hikes at 0.25% for us to even catch up to the 2.64 of fixed rate. So we felt like there was enough buffer that in the event, the economy was changing and it would rise, that we would still be, within that. There was no way to predict Russia and the war. There was no way to predict all the things that came into play and thus impacted inflation and thus impacted the rate continuing to rise. So we started at 1.3%, and now we are sitting at, what are we sitting at? I think we're at 5.8. It has risen. It has risen significantly, you know, and we're only a year and a half in. So that's the one area that I kind of have regrets about. I'm not sure if regret is the right word, but again, there was no way of predicting it. So, you know what, I feel like you can't necessarily beat yourself up. But this is to say is to do your research, and part of determining whether fixed or variable works for you is also your risk level. Like, do you want to live with anxiety each time there's a Bank of Canada announcement? And, you know, there's trepidation because you're not sure if the rate's going to fluctuate or not, or rather prefer the peace of mind of knowing that you have something that is stagnant and that is going to stay that way for the term that you've agreed upon, you know? So that's something to think about. So the other thing is the question of whether a home is an investment. If you watched the first video, I talk about really hoping to create generational wealth and feeling like getting equity and buying a home was maybe my foot in the door towards that. I will say that owning a home is so much more than just those costs that I've cited. So down payment, closing costs. Like, you also have to factor in maintenance, like regular maintenance. Again, even though we had done the home inspection, there were still a lot of problems that have arisen as just like random things. So for example, during winter time, the front door, there was cold air escaping from the front door. So we had to get that changed. Oh, there was a plumbing issue. This is recent. There's a plumbing issue. I think a faulty something. And essentially water had been dripping and it affected our floors. So now, you know, we're in conversation with insurance, and what's inevitably going to have to happen is we're going to remove the whole floors in the living room and change the cabinets in the kitchen, right? Like, who could have predicted that would be happening a year and a half into like owning a place? Not I. So costs that are, so maintenance costs, right? You think of property taxes as well. That's a good chunk that adds up as well.
Hello, it is I from post-production with a mic, and I'm here to also flag interest as hidden finances associated with home ownership, because there's a certain amount that goes towards your principal, which is the main loan that you borrowed from the bank. And then there is the amount in interest for that loan. And you will cry for those first probably, 10, 15 years of paying down your mortgage. You will likely cry if you look at the amount that has gone towards the interest. That's all.
I just think that there's so many hidden costs associated with home ownership that when you actually do the math and look at the real cost, it can be a lot. Now, that doesn't mean I have any regrets. I really don't have regrets about this decision. I still think it was the right decision for our family, because really this place offers, first and foremost, shelter. Our family was growing, and so to have this beautiful shelter that feels safe, that will inhabit all of our memories. Like, the kids are going to grow up here and they're going to have really fond memories here. That's so important to me, right? This sort of sense of stability. I think that's really, really important. And, you know, especially for example in Toronto, renting is really, really expensive too. It's not like it's super cheap. And I feel like there's a lot more conversation about how landlords, maybe they were making a certain amount by renting, but then again, with the changing economy, sometimes they're having to kick their tenants out. Some of them are lying, saying that they're going to rent to family when in turn they're just going to hike up the prices. Like, there's a lot of like shady business with renting as well that's happening right now. So again, to have that sense of security with this, with knowing that this is ours, I think that definitely provides a form of solace to me. And that's not to say that this home won't be an investment. I think years from now, if we're able to hold on to this, years from now, potentially it will prove to be profitable, and maybe it will actually, earn us enough equity that we're able to, do something big with it. But again, for me, it felt like a way to sort of get our foot in the door. And I'm so grateful that all the stars aligned and all the help, like the community that we had literally that helped us achieve this goal. It just feels I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for it. Anyways, if you have any questions, if you want to share your opinions, like you already know, drop a line in the comments. Are you like a homeowner? Like, I really want to hear from other homeowners about their experiences, especially like the first 2 years, but then also people who have been doing, people who've been at it for a minute, like, comfort me. Tell me it gets better. And you know what? Also, you end up learning so many more skills. I feel like I've had to become more of a handy person, just to be able to fix certain things and drill certain things and put things up. And that I find really affirming as well. Okay, tangent, sorry, done. Like, subscribe, comment. You already know what it is. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. And I will see you again next week. All right, bye guys.